Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Okay, Jordan, welcome to this episode of the Australian Business Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Owen. It's good to be back in the studio.
Good to be back in the studio indeed, my friend. And we are joined by royalty Zara Rumsey. How are you going?
Good to be here.
Zara, you're new to the podcast.
Yes.
You're new to a lot of people that are listening to this. Some people may have heard of you or spoken with you recently.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to be doing a marketing mini-series, and we brought you in as our marketing guru because that's what you are. So we maybe just to kick things off, before we get into the thick of the mini-series and we tell people what to expect, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So I work in digital marketing. I've been in the industry for about a decade now. And kind of gone across from agencies. I've worked a little bit in-house. I've worked for a few sort of not-for-profit businesses as well. I guess fast forwarding to now, I am CEO and Director of Inflection Marketing.
Yeah, cool. And so what does an average day look like for you, Zara?
Very varied. Super diverse. So anything from putting together a strategy for a new client that's coming on board to interviewing and doing some sales calls, talking to new businesses, clients that might be interested in digital marketing, and just kind of doing a bit of a brand audit as well. So recognizing where their business is sitting at the moment, potentially where their profit margins are sitting, and if there's anything we can kind of be looking at in terms of how to get their business in a better position before we even dive into digital marketing.
So Zara, did you always want to get into marketing?
No, actually. When I finished school, I went into a degree in science and biology. I thought I wanted to be a chemist. And so I did that for about a semester, realised that I didn't love physics that much, and then went into a professional and creative writing degree because I thought I wanted to write a book and then I wanted to be a journalist. Finished that, realised I didn't want to do that either. Took a bit of a gap year, and then got into marketing.
Cool.
And then did a Master of Marketing.
Why marketing?
A lot of reasons, actually. I think the biggest thing was I worked in retail for a little while and really liked visual merchandising as an initial kind of gateway. And then as I started learning more and more about marketing and advertising, both paid advertising, so digital marketing and traditional advertising, really fell in love with consumer psychology. So looking at understanding why people buy, what encourages them to buy, and how to sell a product as well.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about marketing in this mini-series. But before we get to that, Zara, do have a few questions for you, a bit more tongue-in-cheek, before we dive straight into the thick of customer advertising marketing, generally strategy, etc. I've known you for a little while now, and I realised that you did do a bit of travel in your time. So
Yes.
I would like to know your hottest tips for travel. Where should people be going? Or if you could click your fingers and go back there right now, where would you go?
Tough. That's tough. I think Spain always has a piece to my heart. About a decade ago, I did the Camino de Santiago, which is about an 800-kilometre trek across the north of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
So always has a piece of me. So Spain, definitely. Italy, kind of anywhere in Italy, I think I'm in love with. And Edinburgh in Scotland.
Oh, Edinburgh. Why is that?
I think it's just beautiful. The city, the streets are so beautiful. The lighting in Edinburgh is so beautiful at night. Yeah.
I've always wanted to go there.
Really?
On the bucket list for sure.
I think there's a business
Castles.
trip coming up.
Oh, for sure. We have a conference.
Yeah.
In one of those castles.
Any excuse will do.
For sure.
Okay, so in this series, we're going to talk about all different types of things. We'll start off with the absolute basics of marketing that every business owner should know.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about where the process begins for someone who is revamping a strategy, or if they are starting from scratch, they've got a blank canvas. And we'll maybe conclude this series with some Q&A. So if folks want to send in your questions, do it via the link in your show notes. There is a link below the YouTube video as well. It just says ask a question. Select the Australian Business Podcast, and we will send your questions or put your questions to Zara in the final episode of this marketing mini-series. So one of the things to kick things off, one of the things we talk about is knowing your customer when it comes to marketing.
Yeah.
So how important is that?
So important. So important. I think as a business, you need to be so aware of who you're talking to, who your customer target, like who your target demographic is, and how to communicate with them. You know, what channels they're on, what platforms they're using, how they like to be communicated with. I've seen and worked with a number of businesses in the past that, you know, maybe they originally built a product or started creating a product for a certain demographic that they wanted to sell a product to. And it wasn't until they'd invested in a content shoot, they built a website, they had their models, you know, kind of curated on the website. And then they put the product to market and realized that it was a totally different age demographic that was buying the product. And I think having not done that research and really understanding who the product is geared towards, then you kind of have to go back and you have to start from scratch. And obviously as a business owner, particularly for small businesses, it's a huge waste of money, and that's something you have to go and reinvest time and energy and finances into.
For sure. Even on that example, it's such a big outlay from the get-go, and then you've got it wrong essentially from the start. So it's super important you do know that. When you do work with a business, where do you start?
First thing would be a brand audit. So really understanding again where a business is sitting in the target market, who their kind of core demographic is, who their competitors are, what's their pricing look like compared to their competitors, so that then we can understand how we actually want to be communicating, the tone of voice that they want to be using, what channels we want to be using. And then also looking at things like their website and like the customer journey process. What does that look like? Is that smooth? Is there kind of, you know, changes that we need to be making on the website to improve the conversion rate, for example, to make that process smoother for those customers? You know, is the content that we're creating really great? Is it engaging? And then so really looking, I guess, doing a total review of where their business is sitting. And then we kind of go from there in terms of, is there any changes that we need to make, and how can we kind of build our really solid strategy out of that?
So this is what you would call a brand audit, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. And typically you go and you look at all the competitors, you look at the landscape, do all those types of things. Do you review people's technology at the same time? Like would you sit down and go, this doesn't work, or that looks good, or whatever? Yeah,
I think particularly for like service-based businesses, that's super important. And like the sales process of a business, but also looking at like their email marketing, for example. What does that automate? You know, is that automated? What does that process look like? Is there any kind of systems that we can be putting in places to save the business owner time so that they can be investing their time into another area of the business.
Mm-hmm. How about, so one of the headlines of this episode is like marketing strategy, which is very, very high level. What does that mean to you when someone says to you, what is marketing strategy? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Tell us what it is.
So I guess encompassing some of those things that we spoke about in terms of the brand audit, but then also thinking about, again, the business positioning in the market and product to market fit, understanding who that target demographic is, and then knowing all of that information, then we kind of go, okay, well, looking over the next kind of 3, 6, 12 months, what do we want to be hitting as a business? What does that goal look like? How can we kind of break that down? And then in order to reach that goal, say we want to make $1 million in our first 12 months. Okay, that's amazing. Like, how are we going to achieve that? And then what channels are we going to use? What channels are we going to leverage to make that happen, you know? And then what activities do we need to do to support that? Is there organic, collaborations that we need to be doing? Is it paid? How do we engage with our community? All those sorts of things.
Sorry to jump in there, Jordan. Is it common that you would find a business that has a well thought out marketing strategy? Because I feel my experience so far with dealing with a lot of small businesses has been that no one really has their hands on this, a really strong handle on it.
Totally.
Most people are doing something, but they don't really have like a coherent, well-formed strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of knowledge that has to come into the space in terms of understanding different platforms and potentially profitability of certain platforms. So I think that I know there's a lot of business owners that are doing a lot of things, but maybe it's not necessarily the right thing for them right now.
So true. I'm a sucker for that. SEO, email marketing, everything's just all happening at once. And sometimes it's like I need to focus on that one thing and really build that out properly. So thanks, Owen, for the SEO tips, because I've started to focus on that one thing now. So definitely a big win.
Yeah.
Zara, if I was starting a new business, how would you approach that marketing strategy?
Initially, I think I'd start looking organic, and looking at ways that we can kind of engage with our community and start building a community organically, so that we can start building trust and authority within the brand. I think that's building an audience and a following is kind of the best place to start. I think when we're looking at paid ads, I see that as paid ads is your accelerant. That's your fuel. You need to have the basis of your fire. You need to have your wood. You need to have your fire starters. You need to have that newspaper kind of scrunched up and put in the bottom of the fire to get it started. And that's your organic audience. That's your content. That's your community. And that comes from time and engaging with your community organically.
Yeah. I like that, the accelerant, and testing that is probably really important for folks too, before they just go and pour all that money straight onto Google and see what happens. Speaking of, what are some of the mistakes that you see a lot of business owners make?
I think product market fit. So again, kind of understanding where your product fits within the market, understanding who your core demographic is. I think if we're looking at a product like skincare, for example, there's a lot of different age groups and there's different products and ingredients that make sense for different age groups depending on what that pain point is. So I think making sure that when we are creating a product that it's actually solving a problem that is already out there. Ideally solving a problem better than other businesses, or finding a new way to solve that problem. But I think sometimes I've seen business owners start a business because they love a product, but it might not necessarily be because there's a gap or something that needs to be solved. So I think that would probably be number one, understanding the market and what the market needs. I think the second one would be ignoring organic marketing. I think in the wave of paid advertising and the importance and the growth that can come as a result of paid advertising, I think I've seen a lot of businesses ignore the organic side of their business, which is where that organic trust comes from, and building that authority and building that community. And so I think there's a lot of ways to do that as well, like community forums, looking at like Facebook groups online, connecting with people that are already asking those questions, and building really organic relationships in terms of providing advice to people for free, because you know what's working in the space. You know, kind of if it's a skincare thing and someone's asking a skincare question, you know as a skincare specialist what ingredients can solve that problem. And then I think the third thing I would say is businesses that don't have goals of what they want to be achieving in a 12-month period. That you're kind of just end up making decisions that might be out of alignment. You might end up spending your time in the wrong area. And obviously as a small business owner, time is so important. So I think it's making sure that whatever time you are investing, it's in an avenue or a channel or a strategy that makes the most sense for you.
Cool. Can you explain the role of a marketing agency and when you think a business should consider hiring one?
That's a good question. I think marketing agencies, there's so many really fantastic things about agencies. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is like agencies are so intelligent. They're so smart, and it just comes from there's so many people that work there. There's so many minds involved in strategy and decision-making, getting that research. And I think that's something that's really hard to come by without working with an agency. I think the second thing would be resources. So agencies have really great resources. They partner with, bigger organizations like Meta, like Klaviyo, which then opens them up to additional training and information before it comes out to the public. And I think if we're thinking about resources and that intelligence and kind of how they tie into one another, if there's 200 clients, it might be spending $1,000 a month. That's $200,000 worth of learnings that you're getting in a 30-day period, which is pretty phenomenal. And then kind of what an agency can do in terms of all of the other clients that they have and the decisions that they can make as a result of that, it's really difficult to get that internally in-house. So I think that they're two really fantastic things that come with working with an agency. And then the creativity side of it as well, again, having lots of different people, lots of different ideas, lots of different, input and suggestions. There's a lot of really out-of-the-box ideas that can come as a result of working with an agency.
So Zara, something we've spoken about a few times on this podcast is how people have bad experiences with agencies. some even really bad. So what are some of the reasons that you think, why do you think that happens? To a polar opposite of what we're just talking about.
I mean, I think, quite often agencies have quite high servicing fees, which comes from having really high overheads as a business. They have a lot of people. Typically, there's an office space involved. They've got, all of these resources that they have subscriptions to, for example, as well, and all of the training and everything that goes into all of those team members in the organisation, which just means that the internal costs are quite high. So then quite often they'll have a sales team that might be more focused on selling clients rather than retaining clients. But I think in that instance, if you are a business that's looking at working with an agency, it's just super important to understand your profit margins, and really understanding, what you actually have left as a business to invest in marketing, what your manufacturing costs are, what your operating costs are, and kind of what that profit kind of margin looks like for you at the end, to understand if you can or can't afford the agency fees that come with that. And, I think if you're an e-commerce based business, thinking about, your shipping costs, thinking about your manufacturing costs, storage, subscriptions, one thing I think I see a lot of businesses forget as well, particularly small businesses, is time, like the time cost that goes into creating a product. Like if you're a handmade jewelry, how long does it take you to put that product together? And are you factoring in the time that it takes for you to make that product? Because that has to be factored into that equation as well. And then, website software. Do you employ anyone? Are you including salaries in that? Are you including a salary for you to take home as well? So I think as a business, if you are looking at working with an agency, then it's super important to understand what those margins look like for you.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot on the show, and I think people probably miss the point on this, is like Rask is an online business, basically fully online and nearly fully online. But Grayspace with Jordan and Daniel, that's a traditional accounting business, although a lot of it's done online. I guess is when we use examples on the show, often people assume that it's only for like a particular type of business that a marketing strategy can apply to. So I guess let's talk about other businesses, like physical businesses, like service-based tradies or whatever you want to talk about. How do those marketing strategies differ, if at all?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover, to be honest. I think particularly in the paid space, if it's an e-commerce business, you're looking at sales per product. If it's a plumber, for example, you're looking at like lead generation and how you can bring new prospective clients into the business. And then also I think looking at more traditional methods of advertising, such as like letterbox drops, and looking at like ways to organically connect with your community. So whether you're sponsoring a local soccer club, for example, that's a really great way to build an organic database. And then I think also looking at like community forums, and then looking at things like Google Ads as a way of bringing in new business through like paid channels.
Cool. Sticking to that example of, say, a service-based business, how often do you think they should be reviewing or adjusting their marketing strategy?
Good question. I think overall, like it's dynamic. You should be reviewing your marketing strategy all the time, like looking at data. Data is so important as a business, particularly as a small business when you are, those profits are slimmer. So you should be reviewing that as often as you possibly can be to understand if where you're directing your money and your efforts, you're getting the best possible return. And so I think reviewing it, if you're looking at like a monthly basis, for example, if you were to work with an agency, you would get a report every 30 days. Great time to then be looking internally at your own kind of profitability and what that strategy looks like and what's working and what's not.
How about, so one of the things is that people get pretty bamboozled by the marketing jargon, coming from industry that has a lot of that sort of thing. What are some of the things that people should absolutely know, like some of the acronyms or some of the things that people should know straight out of the gate?
Yeah. I think return on investment, so ROI, is a massive one. I think a lot of agencies will use a terminology called ROAS or ROAS, which is return on advertising spend. And they're just two very, very different metrics. So return on advertising spend is only the amount of money that's been spent on a paid advertising platform. So if you're looking at running paid ads, like Meta ads, for example, only includes the amount of money that's spent on Facebook. Return on investment actually looks at like the bigger picture. How much money are you actually taking home after your overall advertising costs? So yes, that Facebook spend, but also the agency fees as well. And I think that that's something that quite a lot of agencies will miss out on, and they won't necessarily report on that metric because they're reporting on the work that they're doing, which is the return on ad spend.
Yeah, so they're saying our bid is the marketing spend that you just spent. That's what you want to know. So we'll give you that. They don't really take the whole of business perspective, which would be more ROI. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
And then I think customer acquisition and like CPA, for example, cost per acquisition. So what does it cost you to actually get a sale on that platform? How much is that costing you? Again, looking at like your, if it costs you 50% to manufacture the product, including shipping and those sorts of things, if your cost of goods is sitting at 30% and your profit margin's kind of sitting at that 20% mark, of that, how much do you have left if you start advertising online? So, and then I think another really interesting thing to look at is like customer acquisition in terms of growth. So whether you're looking at your email database, whether you're looking at your social media following, again, all of these different platforms play a role, and your organic and your paid advertising strategies, they bleed into one another. So you want to be focusing on both. You don't want to forget one. You don't want to just focus on paid advertising and forget your organic content and forget your organic strategy. So it's looking at, is your organic following growing? Is your database growing? And I think coming into 2024, that owned database, the email marketing database, is so, so important just to have that owned data.
Yeah, for sure. That's something you've spoken about too.
For sure.
Email database over. What was that example that you had? Was it last week we spoke about it?
I can't remember now. Now I'm on the spot. I'm like...
It was I'd rather have an email list as opposed to...
Yeah. So I'd rather have 100 email lists than 1,000 followers on social media. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
totally. For sure.
Ties in well.
Yeah.
So Zara, can a business like yours help a business owner forecast what their marketing looks like over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about forecasting results, that's difficult because obviously the market changes quite often. But I think what we do is like setting out a 3, 6 and 12-month marketing plan and our goals. So looking at kind of that 12-month period again, is it that we want to make $1 million this year? Okay, great. Let's break that down into 6-month goals and 3-month goals. And then what we do from there is looking at, historically, look at the last 2 calendar years, when's been our most profitable months? Has it been September to December? Is that kind of where we make our most money as a business? And then is our quietest time, March and April? Okay, then what we need to do is we need to plan out this 12-month marketing calendar around those months so that we can really be leveraging those really highly successful months for us. How can we be doing more in those periods to help grow based on what we were at the year before? And then also so we can kind of get through those slower months, are there different strategies that we should be trying so that they're not as slow as they were in 2023?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got one more question for you in a moment, which is how the industry might be shifting. But there's a lot to take away from this episode if I just recap really quickly, particularly the bit around product market fit. I think that's really important for people to sit back and relax and go, let's take a look at everything. Let's bring it all together, put your feet up, just get their laptop out and just have a look at what competitors are doing, their pricing, have a look around, see who seems to be successful and just kind of imitate if you can and see what you can take from those brands, either in your industry or outside. The other thing is like just knowing the different acronyms, I think is so important. Like the amount of business owners that we come across who spend a lot of money but don't know what they're getting or how to interpret that stuff. It's probably how their agency or whatever wants them to feel because they don't know exactly what's happening. But at the same time, like they need to know those numbers.
100%. And I think, I've seen so many the business owners that I see that are really successful are the ones that actually spend the time trying to understand what is happening in their back end, whether it be Facebook advertising, whether it be Google advertising, whether it be email marketing, understanding what a good click rate is if we're looking at emails. What's a good open rate? What is the industry benchmark that we should be looking at for e-commerce, women's fashion? And are these open rates in alignment or are they better than that? And if they're not, are we asking the right questions? Are we testing enough? Why aren't we kind of improving those those metrics. And I think the business owners that I see that are really successful are the ones that really ask the right questions and spend time trying to learn.
Yep, absolutely. Last question was going to be like, what kind of things do you see emerging in the marketing space? There's been a lot of change recently. You know, everything from technology, new SaaS-based companies, AI. What things do you see popping up?
I think AI is massive. I think finding ways to really utilize it within the space is going to be really important. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there in terms of helping us to better understand data and make better decisions after analyzing that data in terms of what's working on that platform. If we're looking at TikTok advertising, using AI platforms, AI extensions, for example, to really understand even more than we currently do and help us to make more strategic decisions as a result of it.
Yeah, love it. I just like from the productivity side, the AI tools are just unbelievable. But then to think that you could actually put it to work in creating graphics, images, optimized copy, landing pages, so on and so forth. So many possibilities. So people can get in contact with you. There's a link in the show notes to Inflection Marketing. People can book a discovery call. For this series, we're also running a series. If you want to get in contact with Zara or you want to work with her and her team, you can get in contact and save some money and book a brand audit and strategy with Zara. You can do that via the link in your show notes. All the information is there. It's only going to run while we've got the mini-series taken off. So check it out. Have a look. If you do currently use an agency, we would highly encourage you to come and take a look at what we're doing over there because I think it will change your perspective on what can be done. So this has been heaps of fun, Zara. Well done for your first episode on the Australian Business Podcast.
Thank you. It's been good to be here.
Yeah, we've got a few more to come. So we'll dive deep into email marketing next. Jordan, as always, mate, an absolute pleasure.
Always. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.